So this is briefly agenda. You've seen in the Slack. I'm passing the control to Alex Lezun to continue from that.
Yep, thanks. Hi guys. Hello. I guess you already saw the agenda for today. So you'll have a small presentation from Vitaly Boyko about the extended store config coverage. We have implementation of query complexity and limiting by Yaroslav. We have rendering content of CMS pages and retrieving quote information via the GraphQL by Roman. One small presentation of newsletter request via the GraphQL from me, and GraphQL schema for checkout by Alex Alaros from Magento. Yep, I guess we can generally start from the first one, this Vitaly. Just one note, last pull request from Vitaly also was already merged. That was basic implementation of the store configs, and today he will show us the extended store config coverage. You're welcome.
Hi guys. So let's start. I'm gonna share my screen. So these days I worked on extending GraphQL store config implementation requested from PWA application. So let's jump into it. So last time we have implementation of store config interface, which has quite limited fields, and it's needed to be extended. In order to do this, I added new data provider. Data provider calls extended store config data provider. This data provider has second param array of extended configs defined in DI XML. So and get these configs, then bypasses getting values from scope config and returns to resolver, which this data gonna be merged and return back to GraphQL framework. Let's jump into DI XML. Here we have this list of configs. Names becomes the keys further, and the passes. And this configs can be easily extended by third-party module DI XML and schema GraphQLs. So here in schema, as you can see, we have these keys and we can access it very easily. So let's make a test. I'm sorry to move it. So last time we have a field from store interface, and this fields from extended data provider. So let's make a query for. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. I have here two stores. It's Ukrainian store and default store, and these configs should be defined separately. So let's make a query to default store. Here, just remember, as I remember, I've changed the title and absolute footer. So, yeah, it's default. It now shouldn't anything change it yet. Let's make call to Ukraine store. All right. That's strange. Oh, yeah. Here we see result of query. So absolute footer as we see changed, and yeah, default title also was changed. So probably that's it from my side. Waiting for your question.
So
yeah, that looks very good.
actually, I have one question. So right now, store is passed in URL. Was this like supported by framework before, or it was added in scope of this task? Because I believe initially we were planning to switch stores via header, and I believe implemented like this, but I'm not sure.
No, switching stored by header till now not implemented, as I know.
So this switch store via URL was implemented?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay, we'll need to take a look.
Let me clarify this point. So latterly I had I've used the store resolver interface, which is looking for store in cookies, but it's not works with switching stored by URL. So that's why I changed implementation to this way.
So can I clarify? I don't understand correctly. So store code in URL was not supported, but you added this support.
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably not something we want, but we can discuss it probably later in code review, because initially the idea was to support store switch via headers, because we want to have like single endpoint for all GraphQL queries, and we cannot have like multiple endpoints. And that's a problem now because we have multiple endpoints if you have multiple stores. So we need to take a look like why store is not passed via, why it's not parsed if you pass it via headers.
Yeah, it should,
because it should work for products categories, and I believe it was implemented on framework level, so it was supposed to work for all other queries as well. So we will need to check like why it doesn't work for your query.
Okay, so thank you.
Yeah, so let's not merge it for now. Let's have some discussion maybe in comments and then decide how to fix it, okay? Thanks.
More questions?
Yeah, just have one note. So Vitaly, you can try checking the controllers within a scope of GraphQL module. You can see one of the controller, it's like an intermediate layer between the framework and the resolvers. And here you can find the processing of the headers for switching the store, etc. So just check controllers in GraphQL module.
Thank you, okay.
Hi guys, I just have one small concerns regarding implementation, and I would like to invite other guys to discussion in the comments. My concern is about having declaration of what config paths are exported to extended store configuration, as some of them are declared in CMS Magento model and another one declared in Zim Magento model. So it creates implicit coupling between the store config GraphQL model and CMS and Zim. So probably it's better to think and introduce dedicated GraphQL models for this purpose, just to not create precedent when necessary to expose any config option will lead to editing this model, because it's like break singular responsibility principles. So this model should provide some extension point, but it should not require each time editing when we want to export some portion of config path.
So Vladimir, if I understand correctly, your concern is that right now we have some DI configuration for GraphQL in CMS module and some other modules.
No, my concern is that we use this config path introduced by CMS model and the model in store GraphQL. So it's implicitly assuming that those models exist and enabled, but if CMS model changes or, for example, introduce new one, config path which will hold, for example, sidebar, we'll need to edit store GraphQL model, which is not really correct. But this, as I told, this is a pretty minor concern, so just to want to highlight this concern and invite everyone to discuss this. Probably it's not so important.
So will you leave this comment in this pull request?
Yeah, I left a comment in pull request, just responded.
Good. Then something else for this topic? Oh, okay. Then, yeah, let's switch to the next one. Yaroslav will show us implementation of query complexity limiting.
Yeah, hey guys. So this task is a little bit tricky. So like I don't have a final solution. It's rather a point for discussions and for further improvements. But I just want to describe the idea. So first of all, why do we need to limit query complexity or to check it before we process it on the deeper levels? First of all, in some occasions, we can have really heavyweight queries that might just put the site down because the single query might result in hundreds of database queries that might be really heavyweight for a store, especially if you have a big amount of SKUs on the store. So the main idea is to analyze the query before it's processed, and if it doesn't match the rules, just show an error or a message that you need to modify your query before it will be accepted by Magento API. And GraphQL or the Bonix module that we use as a basis for GraphQL on Magento already contains some libraries, some like services for checking the complexity. And the trickiest thing in this task is it's really hard to determine the rules for limiting the complexity. And I believe that it's like a continuous process, and we will be determining this complexity over the time. For example, we don't know yet the final complexity of our queries. For example, if we don't want to have a full product information in the order items or so, and I believe we will modify this approach that presented today in the future. But what we can do now is to limit the so what I'm talking about, we can build different rules for particular queries. For example, if we don't want to have some items in the quote requested, we can build a separate rule for that. But we can build a general rule that will analyze the complexity and analyze the query depth. So what means complexity? It's basically it's amount of fields, total amount of fields in the query. And the depth is like self-explanatory. It's how many subsequent queries we have within the scope of the main query. And for now, I have implemented the separate service for this purpose. It's called Query Complexity Limiter. And it's included in a query processor. So yeah, let me find it. So I have a huge test here. Yeah, it's injected directly in the query processor. So it's being executed before the query is processed. So it has only one entry point that's called execute. And it's quite simple for now. It's checking for query depth. And I set query depth like 50 for now, and query complexity 150. I was just testing the different queries and checking the most heavyweight queries, and then I just started from these values, and I believe that these values are fair for start, and we might change them in the future. And for like to not hard code these values, I put it into the XML of the GraphQL module, so we can change these values, or if for some reason some third-party extension needs these values to be changed, it just can be defined in the DI XML in the configuration. So for now, it's just checking this complexity, these two values. So as I said before, we have document validator, query depth, and query complexity services inside of GraphQL module for checking this, for adding these rules, for checking the complexity. And yeah, and there was one more discussion about checking complexity and depth. So we had like initial implementation of these rules, but it was a little bit different, and it was enabled only for development website. So development mode, I mean, so if the developer mode is enabled on your website, these rules work, or vice versa. I don't remember exactly, or it's just for, no, it's just for production mode. Yeah, so if you have production mode, so these rules work, but if you have developer mode, this rule is not will not be executed. And I believe it's not a good approach because, for example, you can develop a store in developer mode, and you can have some queries, and the queries just fine, they are working, but after you switching to the production mode or deploying your code to the production environment, it might have like unexpected behavior because of the complexity. So you have different behavior on different like deployment modes. So I believe we should have these rules everywhere. And yeah, so the main idea of the separate class, the separate service or model for limiting the query complexity. If in the future we will have some more complex logic for checking some particular queries, we can put this all this logic here, or maybe we will need some different services for this purpose. So who knows? And let's test it. So first of all, we can test the query depth is like this crazy query you can see here. So it's like recursive query, and if we don't limit queries like this one, it's really a heavyweight for the store, and you might wait for 15 or more seconds until you get some information. And I believe if you have some concurrent calls with similar query, it might be crazy for the store. So, and as you can see, it says that your query depth is not like right. It should be less than 50, but we have 51. And the same place, we have another example of checking query complexity. So we have a query with a big amount of fields. And yeah, let's test it. And you can see that it says that query complexity should be 150. It's bigger. So that's the main idea, and like the prototype, and we extend it in the future. So for example, if some customer reports an issue with some query that's very heavyweight for a store, we can add additional rules in our complexity limiter. And yeah, that's the main idea. And if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Yaroslav. So actually, we already had query depth implemented. It was, I believe, equals to 10 in production mode, as you mentioned. And also we have schema introspection disabled in production mode. And it was, I believe, implemented by our team because this is like best practice to disable introspection on production. But we can still investigate this and make sure that the decision was correct. And for query limiting, it's also like if you have it set to 10, for example, In developer mode with introspection, you was basically facing this query depth constraints, and you was unable to perform introspection. And probably that's why query limiting was disabled on production. I'm sorry, disabled on developer mode, but it was enabled on production and equals to 10. So we can probably talk about this. And I'm not sure that 50 is a good number because it seems to be like too high.
Thank you. It's a really good point, and it's as I said, it's point for discussions. I thought that 15 is really like large number, but after checking some queries, it's possible. But yeah, we might experiment a little bit with that. And as for the introspection and the previous implementation, I have moved it completely to the new query complexity limiter class, and the introspection still disabled in the production mode. So,
okay. So you just moved it. I just didn't remove it, or you just implemented a new one. If you moved it, it's fine.
Yeah, it still uses the same logic as before, but I have changed a little bit the values for depth and complexity, and then we can move like so. What was implemented previously for developer mode, everything of that were disabled, so we didn't have like depth analysis or complexity checking, or we also had introspection disabled in production, but in developer mode we didn't have like different of these rules. And as I said, we can experiment with that, so it's like just a starting point.
Yeah, I think it's good to enable query depth limiting on developer mode, but we probably need to raise value from 10 to a little bit higher value, but not to 50. And see if our introspection works correctly in developer mode. Because like previously, most likely depth limiting was disabled because of introspection restrictions.
Yeah, great. I believe so we can just check here. So query depth was 10, the limit, and yeah, the complexity was disabled previously.
Yeah, let's discuss it probably.
Yeah.
Right? Thank you.
Very important issue. Andrew Levin yesterday brought up some recent service was shut down by denial of service attack in GraphQL. So this helps to avoid HTTP agents.
Yeah, that's the main idea.
Good. Any more questions? Good. Then, yeah, thanks a lot. And we move into the next one. This Roma. You can proceed with your part.
Thank you. Hi, guys, and just a small update from my side. This week, let me share my screen first. Yeah, this week we decided how to be with rendering the content of CMS entities, and we came up with the solution where we gonna use such filter from widget module. And this approach gonna be used and gonna work both on community version of Magento and commerce one. And this approach also taking into account that page builder can be enabled, because page builder is gonna extend this class. That's why we gonna have our content rendered in any case if we go this way. And this stuff was already implemented, and yeah, I believe I need to check the one thing is Travis feedback, and yeah, it's ready to review. And also currently I'm working on the quote API, and the current progress is that I involved Alex into and Sasha into the discussion of the information that should be available for the first interaction for this task. And yeah, after we discuss this stuff, I'm gonna proceed with implementing the resolver and other stuff that we need to have to make this API available for PWA and other application.
So yeah, basically that's pretty it from my side. Thank you.
Thanks, Roman. Actually, I have one question regarding this issue which you're currently showing. Was it in ready for pickup column or like ready to start column, or it was in new column? Because it looks like it's not really groomed yet. Do you remember like when you pick it up? Did you pick it up like from the most left column on the board?
Oh, actually, I don't remember where it was, but right now it's in progress.
No, scroll down. It'll say in the history right there. It says
okay, it
ready to
was
start to progress. Yeah, so it was there.
okay. Yeah, then it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
We can discuss requirements for this one.
Okay, great.
Good. More questions? Looks like not. Okay, then I'll start with mine. Second, share the screen. I have to move this away. Okay, I took this this small issue just to make some start for GraphQL code development, which I never did before. Just had no time to jump in onto the project, so I took something smaller one, especially as we're working together with Artem on PVA. We're really interested in GraphQL stuff, and that's something we will need to implement. And yep, in this case, I took the newsletter subscription. So there's this idea that while building some tools via the GraphQL, we need to provide the user experience. So we need to provide a My Account section. And I started with newsletter subscription, GraphQL call, which is generally quite simple one. Yeah, we have here the subscription resolver, which is trying to get in the newsletter subscription based on the customer which is logged in. So you cannot get it by ID or so, you just get in it. If you're logged in, you will receive if the customer is subscribed to newsletter or not. Yeah, with quite simple schema. Here with return this if subscribed true or false, so it will be Boolean. And yep, as example, generally to try it yourself, you have to first get a token for authorization, which can then can be transferred in a header. So to make it easily, as we don't have this GraphQL coverage, and I guess Vitaly took this task last days. So I use the usual REST API. So just after receiving the token, and paste it as a header, and then try the call. And in this case, I'm subscribed. And if I will, wait, where is it? Yep. So the account which is testing, and if I remove the subscription from here, then it will disappear from here also. Yeah, quite simple. And I'll add the test there a bit later, but yeah, that's it. Any questions?
Should we call it like customer subscription? Because now looks like the query is on top level and it's not clear what is this about. Or customer subscription status or something like that.
Yeah, could we make it part of, does it make sense to make part of the customer query? Because we have a customer endpoint that returns information about the current customer, right?
Yes. So
to me, it feels like probably semantically fits better with the existing object.
Like you mean to take the customer object and add the parameter, like is it subscribed or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the only customer that you'll be able to query this data about is the current logged in customer, right? And this is just feels like it's more fitting with the with that query.
Is it a customer or already implemented? The basic?
Yes, there is one. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, then I'll move the implementation there. It's fine.
Yeah, it returns some information about the currently logged in customer if you're authenticating with the token or if you're authenticating with a session, right?
I'm not sure about session, but maybe we need to check like what we enabled for customers.
Yeah, I thought that was possible. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. If we can, yeah, let's move that inside of the existing customer query. But
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Otherwise, looks great.
Cool. Okay, good. And then let's switch to the next one, and that's Alex. That's you for GraphQL schema for checkout.
Okay. Yeah. Alex, can I stop sharing, please?
Ah, yeah. Do it here.
Find my ID. 1 second. Okay, so actually we have already discussed this question yesterday on architecture council meeting, public architecture council meeting, but I'm pretty sure that most of you guys haven't attended this meeting, so I will just cover some use cases and decision points that we currently discussing regarding checkout flow with GraphQL. And we are going to publish some proposal documents soon, maybe like in several days. And then everybody will be able to join and leave comments and everything. But for now, if you have any concerns or like comments regarding this early list of decisions, like you're welcome before we design the actual schema, because this will, like all these decisions will affect the schema a lot. So first of all, we are going to have like separate mutations for each checkout step. And basically you will be able to create empty cards, add items, shipments, payment methods, etc. So, and this is already reflected in current issues which are created on GitHub. Then second point, that we are going to have uniform interface for guest and customer. So you will not have to do it like you're doing currently in REST using like different endpoints. So you probably remember that we have like mine and just guest endpoint. And here the difference will be decided by the presence or absence of header authentication or authorization header. And otherwise, interface should be uniform, and for you as, let's say, client developer, it should not matter, are you working with guest checkout or you're working with customer checkout. At least that's the idea, to make it as uniform as possible. We will see, maybe we'll have some use cases when it's not possible, but for now, this is our main direction to do this. Then we have some complications with adding products to cart. And the main complication is because we have different product types in Magento. And if you looked at our products endpoint in GraphQL, products query in GraphQL, you notice that we have interfaces there, and we basically have multiple implementations for product interface, and this allows us to work with different product types. GraphQL has limitation that for input types, which we have to use for, let's say, adding items to cart, for input types, interfaces are not supported, and that's why you cannot use polymorphism for product information when you add in product to cart. And for now, the decision is, or at least we are planning to design schema in the way that we'll have separate mutations for different product types. So let's say here, you can probably see it here. So we will have something like this. So you have separate mutation for adding simple products to cart, configurable, like downloadable bundle, etc. And you will also be able to add multiple products of the same type at the same query. Another point is that probably not everybody knows that you can combine multiple mutations in one query. So you should be able to request adding multiple products of different types to the cart in one query. One of the use cases which is currently present in Magento is that you can go and add multiple products by SKU from, I believe, customer account, right, Misha?
Yes.
Yeah, so from customer account, you can do that. And if product doesn't require any configuration, like with custom options or configurable options, then you should be able to add a bunch of products simultaneously. So this use case will be supported. Another reason for having multiple products to be processed at the same time is that basically you will be able, as extension developer, to create observers or plugins, and you will be able to create more implementation for your extension. And right now in service contracts, we have an issue with, let's say, our repositories, that we don't have bulk operations for persistence, like products update, for example, products create. So for those operations, you have to send requests like one by one, and extension developers also create plugins and observers like for singular input. And this creates performance implications. So in design of new APIs, we try to avoid this, and even if we don't have specific use case for batch operation, like bulk operation for, let's say, persistence at the moment, it still makes sense to implement it to allow extension developers implement their extensions efficiently if we decide to do operation for multiple products at the same time. So then in the future, we may potentially create an endpoint or single mutation to allow creation order in one call. It is not currently on the nearest backlog. Possible to do it in the future if we need to. And the last point, if you're familiar with REST, you may know that card ID is not hashed if you work with customer, but card ID is hashed if you work as guest. And here we want to make it uniform, and we want to make it hashed in all cases. Yeah, so basically that's the main decision points that we did so far. And also I'm currently looking into supporting asynchronous mutations. And basically I'm trying to understand like if something is required from our side or it's completely managed by client. So guys, if anybody has experience in this area, feel free to reach out to me and we can discuss it. But for now, it looks like it should be possible to still return, let's say, card object from each of these operations, and then client can decide to send request asynchronously and not wait for response. And then it is possible in GraphQL to get response via subscriptions, which is similar to webhooks, but subscriptions are not currently implemented on our side. Or it is possible for client just to poll, let's say, card query to get info on specific card that client is trying to create. So let's say if he has already created empty card, he has card hash, and then he can send all these mutations for adding items and populating card. And he might do this asynchronously and then just poll card query to get information about the card that he has just created. And alternative way is just to subscribe to use subscriptions and to receive notification basically about created card on some endpoint on the client side. But this is an open question for now. So if you have any concerns regarding any of these items, please let me know as soon as possible before we detail out the schema, because actually I'm going to work on details for the schema like in the nearest days. And as soon as it is done, we are going to publish it to our architecture GitHub. And you may know that now we have all our architectural discussions public. And yesterday we had our first public architectural discussions meeting, and it's going to be like bi-weekly meeting. And all architectural proposals and design documents are going to be public and open for community to contribute and raise any concerns. So feel free to join to those discussions as well if you're interested. Okay, so any questions, concerns at this point?
Regarding asynchronous mutations, by subscription to webhooks, or how do you call it, subscription to events. Do you think any changes needed on the client side?
So client should be implemented. If client wants to work with subscriptions, he needs to implement support for subscriptions, for example. But to be honest, I'm not sure that you want to like dive into subscriptions right now. I'm trying to see if you need to. Basically, why I'm looking into this right now, because I need to understand like what is the best way to specify response type, or like basically type of this field. Because if it needs to affect response type, then we need to know about this now, because we don't want to change it in the future. So we want to design it initially to be able to support asynchronous cart operations.
Okay, it feels related to the PWA, like might be dictated by the UI of cart functionality.
I don't think it will be dictated, but we need to at least have a way for client to send this request asynchronously, and we need to support asynchronous calls, because this is probably main ideas of PWA, to have this optimistic response and be able to send those requests asynchronously.
Okay, good.
More questions? Okay, then I guess we are done with our agenda for today. Maybe somebody has some other questions to other topics. Yeah, if not, I would say thank you very much to everybody.
Yeah, and thanks, good progress. Thank you for working on our project, on GraphQL project, and let's make it great.
Yeah,
That's
good
our
work.
goal.
Yeah, thanks guys. See you next time.
Yep, see you next week.
Thanks.
Next week.
Have fun.